Hi YouTube, if you've seen this channel before then you'll know that I make a lot of like weird movie creatures and that kind of thing, do a lot of modelling and sculpting, and some of you have requested that I show you some of the tools that I use, so I thought I'd just go through my model making toolbox here. So here's some wire cutters, they're essential. These are wire benders, so I use quite a lot of aluminium wire to make armatures and things for my kind of figures. It's quite useful to be able to bend it, although it is quite easy to bend without any tools, but those are quite useful. Got lots of things like sewing machine needles, small pairs of scissors and that kind of thing. Um, Over this side I've got these rubber tipped sculpting tools. These are really good for working in soft modelling material, like I use a lot of milliput and that kind of thing. This is actually an old crab stick. So you can kind of find tools wherever you go, really. It's just worth looking out for things that are not necessarily actual sculpting tools. These tools are for making like little dome shapes, or you can use the pointy end for kind of more fine sculpting work. Then I've got a lot of dental tools. So if you look out for dental tools in various places, like I buy them from car boot sales a lot. Obviously, if you buy them singly, they can be really quite expensive. But if you look out for them and just build them up gradually over the years, you end up with loads before you know it. Got lots of tweezers and forceps and that kind of thing as well. This is a mini Tamiya hobby saw. This is really useful. I bought this fairly recently, but I use this a lot. It's such a kind of fine blade, you get really fine cuts with it, and you can cut very small objects really easily. I've got a whole load of artist palette knives in here as well with different shaped blades. You just get used to kind of experimenting, trying different things out, and each one gives a different kind of effect. Okay, and here's a whole load more dental tools. Like I say, if you were to buy this whole kind of modelling box that I've got here in one go, it would cost a small fortune. But if you build up all these things very gradually, just spend a few pounds at a time here and there, it builds up, quicker than you think actually. These are small files. They're really useful again for milliput because once milliput's dried, it dries rock hard and then you can file it or sand it. All these tools with metal balls on the end are called ball styluses. Lots of different sizes in here. They're really useful if you're joining two pieces of modelling material together because you can blend down and really smooth the edges in nicely. This section is mainly filled with tools that have got points on the end. So this is a punch. I've got lots of things in here like mounted needles and that kind of thing. Anything that's got a really nice point to it can be used for obviously making holes, but you can also use it for doing very fine sculpting. This is another dental tool with a sort of hooked end. That's quite a useful one. Here's a thing from a set of screwdrivers, but again it's just a pointed end to it. This next compartment is all full of different tweezers and forceps. Again, they've all got kind of different ends to them, or they're different lengths, so useful for different things. This is a particularly useful pair. It's made of titanium, and these are surgical tweezers, so really fine, just for kind of grabbing very tiny things. I also realised recently as well, you can actually use tweezers to actually sculpt just by kind of pinching the modelling material. That can be really useful because they're much finer obviously than using your fingers. Down here's a load of bits, mainly kind of screwdriver bits, but there are things for kind of undoing Allen key bolts and that kind of thing. This is a little useful tool by Tamiya again for undoing small nuts. So a lot of my modelling and stuff that I do it's not all sculpting. Some of it is actually building little models, and it can be useful to use screws and that kind of thing to join stuff together. Here's a little tiny ratchet driver for small screwdriver bits. Again, this is very useful, just partly because it's just so small. Finer things are really quite useful. You don't want really massive screwdrivers and things, so I've got tiny weeny little kind of watchmaker screwdrivers in here as well. Very useful. A few more dental tools in here. You get used to your favourite dental tools obviously, and you use some all the time and others you hardly ever use, but until you've kind of got them, you don't really know which ones you're going to prefer and which ones you're not. So there are other things in here as well that I use, like these clips. These are by Tamiya as well. Also, you can use just normal crocodile clips. Anything you can kind of hold something in place while you work on it can be quite useful, especially with really fine things that you're working on where you need kind of extra hands. Okay, in this section I've got a lot of scalpels. You may be thinking, surely you just need one. If I was just going to use one, I'd probably use this one, just a standard scalpel with a number 11 blade. This is a useful one where you can unscrew it and you can change the angle of the blade. It's quite different and it's quite nice because it's rounded with a knurled handle. This one is a much finer one, again, round with a knurled handle. So this is quite good for more sort of precision work. This thing's very useful. It's called a pin vise. It's basically like a little drill. I use this for making holes a lot of the time, either for pushing wire into the hole, or actually, you make a hole and then you can screw a little screw into it and that kind of thing. Okay, it's got a little bit at the end that twists as well, so you can kind of push down on that while you're twisting it. Very useful. Right, down here, this is another Tamiya saw. This one, when I saw it, when I first ordered it, I thought it was going to be a lot smaller than it is. It's actually quite big, but really useful for making cuts in, slightly bigger things that I'm modelling. Here we've got a little clamp. This is useful for just holding something in place while you work on it. You can actually screw that down onto a bench or something as well, or a big block of wood to make it easier. This thing is used for bending wire. If you need to bend wire into a very kind of specific pattern, you can. It's got these little kind of metal pegs that you can kind of take in and out, so you can change the configuration of it. I haven't used this very much, but when I do use it, it is pretty useful. Right, this is a little jig for making 45-degree angle cuts or 90-degree angle cuts. You just put the saw in it. I use my Tamiya saw here, and yeah, you can put an object in there, saw it, say at 45 degrees, and then you can join it to another object that's 45 degrees as well to make a corner, that sort of thing. It's quite good for limbs, if you're making little limbs for creatures and that sort of thing. Right, this is called a Dremel Versa tip. This is so useful. What it is a gas-powered soldering iron, but you can change the tips on it as well. So you can see here, this is the soldering iron tip on here, but you can put various kind of flat tips on it and things like that. This is really useful for, I use it a lot because I keep a lot of animals as well. So I actually use it for kind of making breathing holes in plastic tubs and that kind of thing. But it's really useful for, actual soldering as well. You can see all the various tips in here as well, along with a whole load of my number 11 scalpel blades. My favourite type of scalpel blade because they're so kind of fine and pointed. Okay, I've also got this little set here, which is just a whole load of kind of mini spanners and that kind of thing. Again, more screwdriver tips. Just a really useful little handle, that one as well, because it's got good grip. It's quite fine. You can see another little set here with tiny screwdriver bits. This is quite useful because it's got that kind of bit for going around corners as well. More little screwdriver tips in this box as well. And you can never have too many screwdriver tips. Here's a coil of solder. You get through this pretty quickly, but you could just keep replacing it every so often. Here's a really small hammer. It's really useful to have a tiny hammer like this, just one that you could just fit into your toolbox, because normally, obviously, hammers are pretty big, and you don't want that for when you're doing really fine detail modelling. Right, this is just something I picked up from a car boot sale. It's a whole load of dental drills. These are ridiculously expensive if you want to buy them singly. I think I paid about £5 or £6 for all of those, and I've been able to get a motor, dental motor, so that I can actually use those as well. Very useful for doing very small models where you have to use kind of little mini drill bits. Okay, I hope that's giving you some idea of my main model making tools. If you're just starting out doing this, don't let this put you off, because obviously this has taken me years and years to build up. Just buy the odd tool as and when you can, and yours will build up too, like much quicker than you think. And just try and start with the ones that you think are going to be most useful to you. But also look out for things, wherever you go, things that you can just find that you could use as a tool that aren't necessarily an actual tool made for the purpose. There are so many just, little bits and bobs lying about that you could actually use for sculpting and that sort of thing. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to see more of my model making videos in the future. And I'll catch you in the next video. This channel is sponsored by Milliput. If you haven't used Milliput before, it's a two-part putty, and you mix the two parts together in equal amounts and it starts to set, and it sets fully in about 4 hours, and it becomes rock hard. So if you haven't tried it, give it a go because it's really good stuff to sculpt with.